In this video, I want to show you a couple things you can do with your RAVE valves on a SeaDoo 951 motor. These are things that I haven't come up with. These are things that guys who know a lot more about these motors have done, so I'm not taking any credit for coming up with this stuff, but I just wanted to show you because there's not a lot of videos out there on this. The one on the left, obviously, I've disassembled already, and this guy here I haven't done anything with yet, but first thing I want to do is just going to drill a hole in the cap. The cap doesn't do anything other than just kind of keep everything in there and together. So what this will allow us to do is just see if that RAVE valve's opening correctly, if they're opening at the same time, that type of thing. Remove the retaining clip here. Just be careful, there's going to be pressure on the cap because there's that spring underneath. Just going to want to push the valve up. You've got this spring retainer here. You just pull that guy off and then push the bellow down all the way around. And then this guy will unscrew. I believe it's a 10 mil, if I'm not mistaken, if you need a tool to do it. Okay, again, you're gonna have a spring here. Then on the shaft of the blade, you're gonna have this little retainer, and you're gonna have an O-ring there as well. And you should also have an O-ring on the bottom side here. I have taken these apart and cleaned these up. That's why they look like this already. They definitely will be a lot dirtier if you're just pulling it off the motor. To get the bellow off, you can usually just pull that up like so. You got the similar style spring down here. So now we can take the cap and go ahead and drill a hole in it. So what I'm going to do is just find my center point, just take a small drill bit. This is, probably, it's under 1/8 of an inch for sure. And I'm just going to do a pilot hole. Then what I like to do is take one of these step drill bits and just go and open that hole up. That one is 5/8 of an inch. Just go ahead and clean it out. If there's any plastic that you didn't get, just so that doesn't interfere with anything when we're done. Okay, and that's the first mod you can do to these RAVE valves. This is really, something you can do on any boat. If you have trouble with these guys opening, or you think you may have trouble with these guys opening, you can now do this. And then as you're on the trailer, you can blip the throttle and see if it's opening partially, if one's opening, the other's not, that type of thing. So this next thing we're going to do is more for a performance boat. Don't really need to do this if your boat's stock. The way that these valves are controlled is electronically. We're going to actually go and control them now by exhaust pressure. You can see on this one here, I've got a hole drilled in it, whereas this one does not. So this is the stock one. This is the one I've already modified. You can see that hole there. So some of the older SeaDoos would come stock like this, but the 951s didn't. So we're going to go ahead and drill this out, and I'm going to show you how to do that. On the lower side here, you can see right here, we do have the spot where that hole would be. Just going to get a little more light in there to show you. So where that hole would come through, this is actually on an angle. And then down here in the bottom, you can kind of see that little lip where it would go through on an angle. So you can see right down here, we have this little lip. That's just to give you a little extra material because you're going to be drilling in on an angle. Now figuring out the angle is what's key. I've read online it's about 12 degrees. If you do have a drill bit that has a flat bottom, this one's kind of tapered, but if you get something, or even just a small piece of 1/8 inch metal, you can kind of see the angle just by rotating it around and just feeling where it just levels out, and it's basically right there. It's coming over to the drill press here. What I've done is just clamped. These are actually just a feeler gauge, similar to this one. You need about 1/2 of an inch just to raise that up. So I've gone ahead and done that. Even when you get it raised up the correct distance to get that bit to go down right through, you also have to orient it correctly, because if you do it like this, it's not gonna go. What you need to do is line up perfectly, so perfectly vertical. You need to line this up to where your drill bit is going to be centered. You're also going to make sure it's lined up with this protrusion here. What I like to do is stand directly in front of the drill press, just slide this up a little bit higher and lower that down. And then I can see where I'm lined up perfectly. Just take note of that carefully, then slide it down and double check it. Now this is my final bit. I have this in here from doing the last one, but I'm going to replace that bit with my smaller pilot hole. Probably going to want to do something around 1/16 of an inch or smaller. This one here is an 1/8 inch we're going to be finishing with. What I've also done here is just centered that as best I could with a punch, just so it gives my drill bit something to guide to. And keep in mind when you're doing this, you don't want to be doing it on this side, you want to do it on this side. This side actually is where we're going to get the feed from the engine. So always the side with the little notch here and that little protrusion down there. Okay, so once you get that pilot hole done, you're going to want to go ahead and just kind of do the exact same thing, verify everything, and then do it with your larger 1/8 inch bit. Got that hole finished up there. One tip I want to give you, when you're using the small drill bit, just before you break through here, that's when you have your greatest chance to break your bit, and if it's broken off in there, you're going to have to get new valves. So my recommendation is clean your bit out. What I mean by that is just make your cut, pull it out, you know, flip it over, tap it off, clean everything out, make sure there's no metal in your bit, and do that a couple times as you're going through, and that'll just ensure you get through. You don't have to put a lot of pressure on it, let the bit do the cutting. If you got a nice cobalt sharp bit, you're going to be fine. Now, a couple other things before we go and reassemble. Just want to talk about little details. So I've got 4 O-rings here. The one on the far left is a different size from all the others. So just ensure that when you're replacing parts, these should be replaced anyway with new ones, but if you are going to reuse anything, make sure everything's consistent. Now these little retainers here too, if you notice the one on the right there, just above my fingertip, there's a little notch on it. So you can see that there. Could cause some problems for us, may not seal against that O-ring properly, so that needs to be replaced. Your RAVE valve blade is very important. I've lined these two up. You can see this one here is just slightly shorter. This one's actually been cut. If I separate them a bit there, I think you can see it better. So this one's been cut because the cylinders have been bored over. If we were to put this into a motor that had stock bore cylinders, we're going to decrease performance because it's going to have a larger exhaust opening. If I put this in the cylinder that's been bored over, I'm going to clip a piston ring. We're going to do some damage. The other thing too, if you notice, there's some wear marks. This one has a ton of wear. This not so important. I mean, it's not ideal, but it's not the most important. If I flip this guy over, there's actually a groove here. I can feel that. This one has next to no wear on it. So that one there should be replaced. We have 2 sets of springs in the 951 Raves. So these ones here you can see are 2 different sizes. So you just want to keep that consistent. Again, these ones here, I've got 2 different sizes. The 2 on the left are actually the same size. The one on the right is a little bit smaller. And the one on the far left looks like it is a different size from the one in the middle, but they actually are the same. The difference being it is bent. What I'm getting at here is what you want to do is just keep everything consistent. Ideally, I would use 2 the same size, but because this one's bent, I'm going to replace it. So we're going to have different spring pressures between these guys now, and because this one's bent, it may change things as well. There's different styles of these caps as well. This is a aftermarket, this is an OEM one. You can see it's got the Rotax name on the top there. Ideally, I'd like 2 of these, but if all I have is these, then I'm just going to keep it consistent. That's the main goal here. So same thing with the bellows. You wouldn't want to put these 2 bellows together, and you wouldn't want to put these 2 bellows together. This is an original SeaDoo 951 bellow. This is a replacement SeaDoo bellow, and this one here is a third-party aftermarket bellow. Reason why we want to keep everything consistent, the material these are made out of is different, okay? And that's not slow motion, that's the same type of pressure. This one here is a harder material. This one being the softest. This one's kind of in between. So again, I just want consistency. This is what I'm going to use because you can't get these anymore, and I'd prefer not to use aftermarket ones. So all that said, now I've got my valve rebuilt, got a new gasket in there, and we're ready to go and install this back into the SeaDoo. So just to explain this a little bit further now, we're going to have exhaust pressure come up through this hole here from the engine. It's going to hit here, travel across this channel to the hole we drilled, which will then push the bellow up and pushing the RAVE valve up. So I'll just go ahead and reinstall those. Now, normally on these we'd have our hose connected up here, which then goes up to the solenoid there behind my cooling line. That then follows along, comes to that line under there, which is under your carbs. There's a check valve down there as well. And what we're going to have to do is pull that off because that's our pulse line, and we're just going to cap that off. So your final step here is just to connect the 2 ports there that we're going to the solenoid, just connect them together with a length of hose. That'll just equalize pressure between the 2. So I'll just secure those on with a zip tie, and then we're all set there. So those are a couple mods you can do for performance applications on a SeaDoo 951 to the RAVE valves. So hopefully this video helped you out. I got a lot of other videos about modding these motors on my channel, so please take a look at that as well.